The rain slammed against the window like it was trying to break into our tiny Brooklyn apartment, and I was losing my mind. My heart raced, not from the storm, but from the way Lucas was looking at me. Those blue eyes cutting through the dim light like they could see every secret I'd buried. I'd spent 6 months pretending I didn't notice how his laugh made my chest ache. But tonight, something was about to snap. I'm Devin, 25, a graphic designer scraping by in New York City, sharing a shoebox apartment with Lucas, the straightest guy I've ever met, or so I thought. He's 27, a construction worker with calloused hands and a grin that could charm a brick wall. We met through a Craigslist ad when I was desperate for a roommate, and somehow, his easygoing nature made our cramped space feel like home. But living with him was a tightrope walk. Every casual touch, every late-night talk, pushed me closer to a confession I swore I'd never make. That night, the storm had knocked out our Wi-Fi, so we were sprawled on the couch, splitting a six-pack and trading stories about our wildly different lives. Lucas grew up in a small Ohio town, all cornfields and church suppers, while I was a Harlem kid, raised by a single mom who taught me to fight for every scrap of who I am. "You ever feel like you're running from something?" he asked, his voice low, almost lost in the thunder. I froze, beer bottle halfway to my lips. "All the time," I said, trying to keep it light, but my voice betrayed me, cracking like the lightning outside. Lucas tilted his head, studying me, and I swear the air thickened. He leaned closer, his knee brushing mine, and I couldn't breathe. "What are you running from, Dev?" he whispered, and I knew I was screwed. I'd always known I was gay, but I'd learned to hide it young. Growing up, I saw what happened to kids who didn't fit the mold: whispers, fists, doors slammed in their faces. So I kept my truth locked tight, especially around Lucas, who'd never given me a reason to think he'd care. He dated women, talked about his ex-girlfriend Sarah like she was the one who got away, and tossed around bro like it was his job. But lately, I caught him staring when he thought I wasn't looking, his eyes lingering on my hands, my mouth. It was messing with my head. "Dev," he said again, softer, and I realized I hadn't answered. My heart was a drumbeat, loud and reckless. I wanted to tell him everything. How his laugh was my favorite sound, how I'd memorized the way his shoulders moved when he hauled lumber at work. But I couldn't. Not yet. Instead, I deflected. "What about you, man? What are you running from?" He laughed, but it was hollow. "You don't want to know." He took a long swig of beer, his Adam's apple bobbing, and I had to look away before I did something stupid. The storm raged on, and we sat there, two guys pretending the tension between us wasn't about to break the world apart. The next morning, I woke to the smell of coffee and Lucas banging around in our tiny kitchen. "Yo, Dev, you alive?" he called, his voice bright but edged with something I couldn't place. I stumbled out of my room, rubbing sleep from my eyes, and found him shirtless, flipping pancakes like he hadn't just turned my life upside down the night before. "You look like crap," he said, grinning, and I wanted to both punch him and pull him close. "Storm kept me up," I lied, grabbing a mug. He slid a plate of pancakes my way, and our fingers brushed. It was nothing, just a split second, but my skin burned like I'd touched a live wire. He didn't pull away, just held my gaze a beat too long before turning back to the stove. I was drowning in him, and he didn't even know it. Work that day was a blur. I sat at my desk, tweaking logos for a client who kept changing their mind, but all I could think about was Lucas. His question from last night echoed in my head. "What are you running from?" I wanted to scream that I was running from him, from the way he made me feel like I was falling without a parachute. By the time I got home, I was a mess, ready to confront him or maybe just pack my bags and run for real. But Lucas had other plans. He was waiting for me, sitting on the couch with a pizza box and 2 beers, like it was any other night. "Rough day?" he asked, tossing me a slice. I nodded, trying to act normal, but my hands were shaking. We ate in silence, the TV droning in the background, until he turned it off and faced me. "We need to talk," he said, and my stomach dropped. "About what?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. He ran a hand through his hair, looking more nervous than I'd ever seen him. "Last night," he started, then stopped, like the words were stuck. "I said some stuff and I don't know, Dev. I feel like I'm losing my mind around you." My heart stopped. I wanted to laugh it off, to tell him he was imagining things, but the look in his eyes, raw, unguarded, pinned me in place. "What are you saying, Lucas?" I managed, my voice trembling. He leaned forward, close enough that I could smell the faint cedar of his cologne, and said, "I don't know what this is, but I can't stop thinking about you." The world tilted. I opened my mouth to respond, but no words came. Instead, I did the dumbest, bravest thing I'd ever done. I leaned in and kissed him. His lips were warm, hesitant at first, then fierce, like he'd been holding back as long as I had. When we pulled apart, he whispered, "Your lips taste like something forbidden, and I swear I saw stars." But then he stood up, backing away like he'd been burned. "I can't do this," he said, his voice breaking. I'm not like you, Dev." And just like that, he was out the door, leaving me alone with the storm still raging in my chest. The apartment felt like a tomb after Lucas left. His half-eaten pizza slice sat on the coffee table, a mocking reminder of the moment I'd ruined everything. I sank onto the couch, my lips still tingling from the kiss. His words, something forbidden, looping in my head like a broken record. I'd crossed a line, and now I was alone, wondering if I'd just lost my best friend. I didn't sleep that night. Every creak of the building made me hope it was Lucas coming back, but the door stayed shut. By morning, I was a wreck, my eyes gritty and my chest hollow. I texted him, "You okay? Can we talk?" No response. I dragged myself to work, but my designs were garbage. Angry slashes of color that matched the chaos in my head. My boss, a no-nonsense woman named Carla, took one look at me and said, "Devin, go home. You're scaring the clients." Back at the apartment, I found a note taped to the fridge. "Need space. Staying at Mike's. L." Mike was Lucas's coworker, a loudmouth who always smelled like cheap beer. The thought of Lucas crashing on his couch, spilling his guts about me, made my stomach twist. I wanted to call him to beg him to come back, but pride, or maybe fear, kept my phone in my pocket. Days bled into each other. I went through the motions. Work, home, staring at Lucas's empty room like it held answers. My mom called, sensing something was off, but I couldn't tell her. She'd always been my rock, but explaining this felt like exposing a wound I didn't understand myself. Instead, I threw myself into a freelance project, designing a mural for a queer community center in Manhattan. The irony wasn't lost on me, painting rainbows while my own world was gray. A week later, I was at the community center, sketching outlines on a brick wall, when my phone buzzed. Lucas. My heart leapt, then sank when I saw the message. "Can we meet? Neutral ground. Coffee shop on 7th, 3 p.m. Neutral ground." Like we were enemies negotiating a truce. I wanted to say no to protect myself, but I was already halfway out the door. The coffee shop was crowded, all hipsters and overpriced lattes, but Lucas stood out like a beacon. He was at a corner table, his flannel shirt rolled up to his elbows, looking like he hadn't slept in days. I slid into the seat across from him, my hands clenched to stop them from shaking. "Hey," I said, and it sounded pathetic. "Hey," he echoed, his voice rough. He wouldn't meet my eyes, just stared at his coffee like it held the meaning of life. "I'm sorry I ran out," he said finally. I freaked. "That kiss, it messed me up, Dev." "Messed you up how?" I asked, my voice sharper than I meant. "You kissed me back, Lucas. Don't pretend you didn't." His jaw tightened, and for a second, I thought he'd bolt again. But he leaned forward, his voice low. "I know I did, and that's the problem. I'm not supposed to feel like this. Not about a guy. Not about you." My heart cracked open. "So what, you're gonna pretend it didn't happen? Go back to being the straight guy who doesn't feel anything?" "I don't know what I am," he snapped, loud enough that the barista glanced over. He lowered his voice, but his eyes were wild. "I grew up in a place where this kind of thing got you disowned. My dad, my brothers, they'd lose it. But when I'm with you, Dev, it's like none of that matters. And that scares the hell out of me." I wanted to reach for him, to tell him it was okay to be scared, but I was terrified too. "What do you want, Lucas?" I asked instead. "Because I can't keep doing this. I can't keep pretending I don't." "Don't say it." He cut me off, his voice raw. "Not yet. I need time. Okay? I need to figure this out." I nodded, even though it felt like giving up. We sat there, silent, the weight of everything unsaid pressing down on us. When he left, he squeezed my shoulder, a fleeting touch that burned more than the kiss had. The next few weeks were torture. Lucas moved back in, but it was like living with a ghost. He was polite, distant, like we were strangers sharing a lease. I threw myself into the mural, painting vibrant swirls of color that hid the ache in my chest. The community center's director, a trans woman named Aisha, noticed my distraction. "You painting your heart out there, Devin?" she asked one day, her voice kind but knowing. "Something like that," I muttered, and she didn't push, but her words stuck with me. I was painting my truth, my pain, my hope, everything I couldn't say to Lucas. And maybe, just maybe, it was time to stop running. The mural was nearly done, a riot of color that screamed pride and defiance against the gray Manhattan skyline. I'd poured every ounce of my confusion, my longing, into it, and it showed. Aisha called it electric, but all I could see was Lucas in every curve and shade. His eyes in the blues, his warmth in the golds. I was falling apart, and he was everywhere. Back at the apartment, things were worse. Lucas was trying. Small talk, shared dinners, but every word felt like a minefield. I caught him watching me sometimes, his expression unreadable, and it drove me crazy. I wanted to shake him, to demand answers, but I was too afraid of pushing him away for good. So I kept quiet, letting the silence grow like a wall between us. One night, I came home late from the community center, paint-splattered and exhausted, to find Lucas on the couch, a beer in hand and a storm in his eyes. "You're avoiding me," he said, not looking up. "I'm not," I lied, dropping my bag by the door. "Just been busy." "Bullshit," he said, his voice sharp. He stood, closing the distance between us, and I hated how my body reacted to his nearness. "You think I don't notice? You're gone all the time, Dev. You're running." I laughed, bitter. "Me? You're the one who ran, Lucas. You kissed me back, then bailed. You don't get to call me out." His face twisted, like I'd hit a nerve. You think I wanted to leave? You think this is easy for me? He stepped closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. I'm trying, Dev. I'm trying to understand what this means. Why I can't stop thinking about you. My breath caught. Then why are we doing this? Why are we pretending nothing happened? Because I'm scared, he shouted, his voice cracking. I've spent my whole life being the guy everyone expects. Strong, straight, no questions. And now you're in my head. And I don't know who I am anymore. I wanted to yell back, to tell him I was just as lost. But the pain in his eyes stopped me. Instead, I reached out, my hand brushing his arm. You don't have to know everything right now, I said softly. But you don't have to do it alone. He didn't pull away this time. Instead, he stepped closer, his forehead resting against mine, and for a moment, it felt like the world made sense again. I don't want to hurt you, he whispered, his breath warm against my skin. You won't, I said, even though I wasn't sure. And then he kissed me again, slower this time, like he was savoring every second. It wasn't forbidden anymore. It was real, fragile, and terrifyingly beautiful. But the next morning, reality crashed back. Lucas got a call from his brother, Ethan, back in Ohio. Their dad was sick, and Lucas needed to go home. Just a few days, he said, packing a bag, but his eyes wouldn't meet mine. I wanted to ask if he'd come back, if we'd pick up where we left off, but the words stuck in my throat. He hugged me before he left, quick and tight, and then he was gone. The apartment was too quiet without him. I finished the mural and the community center through a small unveiling party. Aisha introduced me to the crowd, praising my work, but I felt like a fraud. How could I paint pride when I was falling apart inside? A guy named Javier, a volunteer with a warm smile and a knack for reading people, pulled me aside. You look like you're carrying the world, he said. Wanna talk? I didn't, but I ended up spilling everything: Lucas, the kiss, the fear that I'd pushed him too far. Javier listened, his eyes kind. Love's messy, he said, but it's worth it. Give him time, but don't lose yourself waiting. His words hit hard. I'd been so focused on Lucas, on what we could be, that I'd forgotten who I was. I went home and started sketching, not for work, but for me, bold, messy lines that felt like freedom. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I could breathe. Lucas was gone for 10 days, each one heavier than the last. He texted a few times, short updates about his dad's condition, nothing about us. I tried to focus on my art, my job, my life, but every quiet moment brought him back. I'd catch myself staring at his empty chair at the kitchen table, wondering if he'd ever sit there again, laughing like he used to. When he finally came back, I was a bundle of nerves. He walked in late, his duffel bag slung over his shoulder, looking tired but different, calmer, maybe. Hey, he said, dropping his bag, and I hated how much that one word made my heart race. Hey, I echoed, standing awkwardly in the kitchen. How's your dad? Better, he said, rubbing the back of his neck. It was rough, but he's stable now. Thanks for, not freaking out on me. I wanted to scream that I'd been freaking out for days, but I just nodded. Glad he's okay. The silence stretched, heavy with everything we weren't saying. Finally, I couldn't take it. Lucas, what are we doing? Are we going to talk about this, or just keep pretending? He sighed, sinking onto the couch. I don't know how to do this, Dev. Back home, I saw my family, my old life, and it hit me. Everything I thought I knew about myself is a lie. I've been fighting you, because I'm scared of what it means. I sat beside him, careful not to touch. What does it mean? I asked, my voice barely steady. He looked at me then, his eyes raw. It means I'm in love with you, and I don't know how to live with that. The words hit like a tidal wave. I dreamed of hearing them, but now they terrified me. You don't have to have all the answers, I said, echoing what I'd told him before. But you can't keep running. I'm not, he said, and for the first time I believed him. He reached for my hand, his fingers trembling, and I let him pull me close. We didn't kiss, didn't need to. Just sat there, holding on like we could anchor each other against the storm. The next few weeks were a dance of tentative steps. Lucas was trying, opening up about his fears, his past, the weight of his family's expectations. I told him about mine, growing up black and queer in a world that didn't always make space for either. We laughed, cried, fought, and slowly started building something real. But the world outside our apartment wasn't as kind. One night, we went to a bar with some of Lucas's work friends. I noticed the looks, side eyes from guys who'd never questioned Lucas's straight persona. One of them, Mike, made a snide comment about roommates getting too close, and Lucas tensed. I thought he'd brush it off, but he grabbed my hand under the table, his grip fierce. "Let's go," he said, and we left, his jaw tight but his hand never leaving mine. Outside, under the neon glow of a bodega sign, he kissed me, hard and unapologetic. "I'm done hiding," he said, his voice shaking but sure. "I don't care what they think." I believed him, but I knew it wouldn't be easy. His family, his job, the world, they'd all push back. And I had my own battles. Clients who didn't take me seriously, a city that could chew you up if you let it. But for the first time, I felt like we could face it together. Spring came to New York, and with it, a fragile kind of hope. Lucas and I were navigating uncharted territory, learning how to be us in a world that didn't always understand. We'd steal moments on rooftops, sharing beers and dreams, his hand finding mine like it was the most natural thing. But the weight of the world was never far away. His family was the first hurdle. Lucas told his brother Ethan about us over a tense phone call. I sat on the couch, pretending to sketch, while Lucas paced, his voice steady but strained. "I'm not asking for permission," he said. "I'm telling you because you're my brother, and I love you. But Devin's not going anywhere." Ethan's response was curt, something about needing time, and when Lucas hung up, he looked like he'd run a marathon. But he smiled at me, small and real, and I knew he'd meant every word. Work was trickier. Lucas's construction crew wasn't exactly a bastion of open-mindedness. Mike and a few others started freezing him out, their jokes turning sharp. Lucas shrugged it off, but I saw the toll it took. One night, he came home with a busted lip, saying he'd handled it. I cleaned him up, my hands shaking with anger, but he just kissed me and said, "Worth it." I wasn't perfect either. Doubt crept in sometimes. Fear that Lucas would wake up one day and realize this wasn't the life he wanted. I'd push him away, snapping over small things, but he'd pull me back, patient in a way I didn't deserve. "I'm here, Dev," he'd say, and slowly, I started to believe him. The community center became my sanctuary. Aisha and Javier invited us to a pride event they were hosting, and Lucas insisted on coming. I was nervous. He'd never been to anything like it, but he held my hand as we walked through the crowd, his eyes wide but bright. A drag queen named Sapphire pulled us onto the dance floor, and Lucas laughed, spinning me like we were the only ones there. For the first time, I felt like we belonged, not just to each other, but to something bigger. The real test came when Lucas's dad asked him to visit Ohio. I offered to go, but he shook his head. "This one's on me," he said. He was gone a week, and when he came back, he was quiet, different. They don't get it, he said, sitting on our couch, his hands clasped tight. But they don't have to. I told them I love you, and that's not changing. I didn't know what to say, so I kissed him, pouring everything into it. Gratitude, fear, love. We moved to the rooftop that night, the city sprawling below us, and he pulled me close. I used to think love was supposed to be easy, he said, his voice soft against my ear. But this is worth fighting for. And we did fight. For every moment, every touch, every dream. We fought the world's judgment, our own doubts, the fear that we'd lose each other. But we also built something. Late-night talks, shared sketches, quiet mornings where his hand in mine felt like enough. Love wasn't a cure for everything, but it was a start. As the sun dipped below the skyline, painting the city in gold, I carved our initials into a wooden bench on the rooftop, a quiet promise. Lucas traced them with his finger, then kissed me, slow and sure. Still tastes forbidden, he whispered, but this time it wasn't a warning. It was a vow. We weren't perfect, and the world wasn't either. But standing there, wrapped in each other, I knew we'd keep fighting, keep loving, keep carving out a space that was ours. And that was enough.